What's up, guys, and welcome to the third episode of the BrawlCast. This week we have a really special guest, and I want to go ahead and introduce him. We have Gary, one of the lead developers for the Pro TCG. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Gary. I mean, I already introduced you, but you know.
Yeah. My name's Gary. Yeah, I've been working since the beginning on the Pro TCG. Since we pitched various game engines to Spin Master. I'm the lead kind of set designer, and I run our design and development team. So it's been an awesome. I don't know. We've been working on it 4 or 5 years now.
Wow.
And it's been quite the experience. It's easily the coolest and biggest project I've ever worked on in my career. So I'm happy to be on the show and take part a little bit in the community. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Just real quick to start things off. What is, I guess, kind of the day in the life of Gary for Spin Master Life?
Good one.
What all goes into being one of the lead designers for Bakugan?
Well, it really depends on what phase we're at in the project. So it can vary anywhere from playing games all day because we're far along in like a set design and development process, and just sort of sleeving up prototype decks and rolling toys on tables or on Tabletop Simulator during COVID. Or it can be all day in spreadsheets, editing text and that sort of thing, or it can be reviewing documentation or card images, or it can be like doing kind of the initial design work, saying what are the mechanics going to be for the next set that we're working on, and working with Spin Master, because I work at a company called Gamer Entertainment. We're a contracting company. We make games for companies like Spin Master and other places that don't have the experience and skill set in making something like a trading card game, right? So we work alongside with Spin Master, so we're regularly checking in, getting updates from them on changes to the toy line or changes to entertainment's kind of plans for the show. There's all kinds of stuff that keeps us busy, and there's a wide variety of things that we'll be doing from day to day.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of fun, but also like they keep you pretty busy.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I mean, you can't complain if a lot of your job is just playing a TCG that you helped come up with, and and that's your job for a couple days in a row, and even the tougher stuff when plans are changing, because making a giant worldwide toy line is complicated, right? And things change, and things adjust last minute, and there's definitely stressful times. Definitely some super stressful changes and pivots and stuff that happen along the way, but it makes the days go by quick.
Nice. All right, Dylan or Kim, do you all have anything that you want to go ahead and throw? Because I've got plenty that I can throw.
I mean, I guess just the first thing, I remember just going to even the first invitational, and you saying that you've been working on it since the whole reboot being a thing since 2015, and I was honestly shocked. I was like, it was obviously one of those projects, just setting up a big toy line and such, and card game and such, that had been worked on for some time. And I was thinking maybe 2017 started, but all the way back then, I was obviously really shook when that was said.
Yeah, well, and when I say that long ago, full time, we had a team of people working on it, was probably closer to a year and a half before the release, and gosh, the years are kind of blending at this point. So the release was, if I remember right, it was 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was January of 2019.
January 2019. So if you go back to the middle of the year 2017 or so, around there is when full-time work started. They had chosen us as the team that would make the game, because we were sort of, if you could see some of the games and engines that we had built to pitch to Spin Master initially, we didn't know that Baku cores existed, right? That was the level of kind of information we had. We knew we knew old Bakugan, we were familiar with it, and we knew it'd be about these awesome toys that you roll up and use magnets to open up. And so we had this whole game that revolved around holding down these rectangle gates, like the larger rectangles, like the old game. And those gates would have different symbols or different powers that, like, for example, like one might give you an extra energy every turn or something like that, as long as you held it. And the way that you actually fought, like brawled with people, was you landed on the same gate as them, and then you would brawl, and whoever won the brawl got to stay on that gate. And the mechanism for winning the game was completely different. And so we pitched that, and so, one of the VPs at Spin Master and the guy who invented the toys was like, well, this is fine, but take a look at this video. And they showed us this animation of a Bakugan picking up a Bakucore and flipping it open and holding this thing, and they're like, this is what we're going to do for the next one. And we're like, that's great, but we're going to need some time. We're going to need some time to figure this one out.
Right.
And so lucky enough, it was that long ago, and they gave us the time to come back and give them some more pitches. And it took some time, but we eventually got to something pretty close to the game that you play now. And that was when they said, okay, you're the team that we're gonna use, and let's do this.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of goes perfectly into I guess just like some of the other questions that I had, like, what were some of the, like, what's the decision making process look like for if a mechanic in the game is working or not? Like, how does that look?
That, I mean, we're talking about kind of the principles of the job now, right? And so it's a lot about identifying what the heart of the game is. Mm-hmm. And that's a process in and of itself too. And it can vary depending on the same game. You could identify different things that you believe to be the heart of the game. But in this case, the heart of the game is the toys, rolling the Bakugan, being skilled at opening your Bakugan on, particular cores. And so a lot of what we constantly ask ourselves is this mechanic supporting and propping up the core, the heart of the game, in a way that's diverse, that's high variance, that creates exciting moments, that creates tension. And that's really, there are a number of other things that we think about, but like that is kind of the starting point. So for example, when we were messing around with Baku gear and what that would look like, we knew how the toys were going to function. And the toys, the Baku gear toys themselves are mostly just cosmetic. They're there for looking awesome. And so we had to find how that would make sense in the game. And we had these cards, these gear cards that you could equip to your Bakugan. And that seemed great. It would boost your stats and give you special powers, and that's all fine and good. But what we thought really ended up making it work was, tying in sort of the energy cost reductions into the cores, because that made it so that you could have a diverse set of cores potentially, that with given a hand of Baku gear, you might try to hit a certain core over another. And that was really what pushed us over the edge. And that kind of speaks to what I'm talking about, is that connection made it feel like, okay, this is sort of supporting and propping up what we want to prop up here. And so that's, even though the energy reduction is probably a little bit more of a complicated aspect to the mechanic, we felt it was, it was warranted given kind of our design goals. So there's like an example of kind of what I'm talking about.
I, for one, love that. That's one of my favorite things that was recently introduced to the game. I remember, I think, briefly speaking with you kind of about it at MomoCon.
Sure.
You didn't go into a lot of detail because you couldn't, but you were like, you mentioned that there were going to be cores that would reduce things that you did in the game. And I was like,
yeah, whoa.
And everybody thought, at the time that was going to be for like evolutions. And I was like, whoa, that'll be really cool. And then you all dropped, the Baku gear on us, and it was just like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Dylan, do you have anything that you want to go?
Yeah. So I was just thinking about like how, the old Bakugan TCG from like 2006 to like whenever 2012, you know, it was never a full TCG.
Sure.
You know, there was never like, you didn't have a full 40 card deck like you do now. You had a 6 card deck. You had 3 gate cards and you had 3 paper ability cards. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering, like, you know, with the whole process of developing, because you said you guys know the old Bakugan game, you know, what was the process in like developing around that and forming into what we know now? Like, just basically regarding the fact that it was only 6 cards. Like, what went into like having a 40 card deck, and just that's basically it.
Yeah. You know, it was a while ago, so I'll kind of venture back in my mind as best as I can.
Yeah.
So we loved the old game. So we actually just me and Justin are the only 2 members of the team at this point that worked this long ago, because it was actually 10 years ago. We worked on a game called Resurgence. It was the first game I ever worked on, actually. I was just an intern at the time. It was 2010, and we were working with Spin Master, and maybe some people remember the game or not, and I don't need to go into detail, but
I was a big fan.
Yeah. And so that was how we sort of had the context that we needed at Spin Master to even get our foot in the doors, because we worked on that game. We did our best. It had some issues and it didn't, ultimately succeed. But I remember back then working on it and being kind of really impressed by just the toy novelty of Bakugan and just the hook that is, right? And I thought whoever came up with this toy idea and tied it into this game, even though the game is, you could call it, I guess, like not super deep, I guess. It's more just about the kinetics, right? And the decision making from turn to turn is limited. Not to say, I don't mean that as that. I don't think that means it was a bad game. I think it was a really cool game. And I thought that the hook of the game with the toys and the special effects that you could use in limited resources and land on the right gates was awesome. And I just remember back then thinking, I wish I could work on something that cool, and so I remembered looking into the game, and we all talked about things that could be done differently, even when the original game was being made. And so when it came time to talk about this new game, we had very little information about what the new game would be. We only knew that they wanted it to be a little bit more substantial. They wanted players in that sort of 6 to 10 years old range that loved the original Bakugan. They wanted those players to be able to enjoy this game. And not to say you couldn't, if you're between 18 and 30, not to say you couldn't enjoy the old Bakugan game, but to give them something that, you could sink your teeth into a little bit more. But we also were sort of tasked as an important part of this was there would be a way for a 6 to 8 year old to be able to play the game. And that was like a really difficult task to think through. And we struggled with it. So that's kind of why we ended up with this toy battling game versus the pro game, is because, well, we wanted something that could be deep, but we also wanted something that could be more accessible. And so we actually kind of made 2 games. But they're essentially the same game, right? You just layer on the card playing aspect to the pro game. And so I think that sort of sums up a lot of kind of the decision space around how we sort of decided to change things in the end. As far as like the card playing system, clearly is completely separate from the original Bakugan, and we used some experience from a variety of games and some examples from a variety of games to sort of work through all of that stuff, how it ended up becoming the way it was. But it was really going from original Bakugan, it was really just how can we layer something onto this that will be something that we can release thousands of cards and have people building decks and customizing and mastering other elements of the game. And really, we just kind of went from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
because
go ahead.
Sorry, Michael.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. Because I was just, I've said this before on the podcast, and I'll say it again. I think, kind of like the old Bakugan game, it didn't really grow up with its audience. you know, and like how you were saying how Spin Master wanted their new TCG to they wanted a game for a certain audience, you know, the kids, the 6 to 10-year-olds. But they also wanted a game for the people that knew Bakugan when it first came out, and something that they could enjoy too, that isn't so simple that it's, you know, boring.
Right.
But just something that's like super entertaining, super in-depth, and, you know, still building on it. And I know, because I actually just I just did a video on one of the new Bakugan today, and I know you guys are. And I don't know if this was a decision made by you guys or a decision made by Spin Master, but the gate cards are back.
They are.
And, you know,
they're back.
I'm wondering. Yes, and I was wondering about the gate cards. Because I looked at the toy battling rules that were included in that pack, and they didn't have the rules for the gate cards. So is it just the same process, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, there will be an update to the rules that will include a way to play with gates instead of Bakucore. So the idea here is to, you know, harken back to the old cool larger art, you know, gate cards and the old gameplay, as well as give maybe an even more so like a stepping stone, because they're much easier to land on. What, you know, we found is that the younger demographic that we were really trying to appeal to, it was hard for them to hit the Bakukores, right? Like, it's not that easy. You guys are all masters at it, way better than any of us are. We're always like amazed. We're always like blown away when we're watching at the different conventions and watching people play. We're like, oh my gosh, they hit it like 80-90+%, and we're like 60% on a good day, honestly. So that's
about where I'm at. It's okay.
If we're playing a couple weeks in a row, we start to get pretty like, but like you know, it starts to fade pretty quickly after we're doing like card reviews and stuff, and we're not playing every day. But anyway, yeah. So, you know, give them a little bit larger target with these bigger gate cards. So the rules will be updated soon. I think, you know, it's just about rolling it out and getting it all kind of synced up.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they're back.
Oh yeah. I mean,
yeah, they're cool looking too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, the art on them is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was gonna ask. Sorry, just real quick. What were some of the variety of games that you all took like inspiration from, if you don't mind me asking? Because I feel like I could probably guess a few of them, but I'm just really curious if I'm right.
Well, clearly, you know, we're all Magic players.
Yeah.
It was the game that that sort of led me and a lot of my coworkers, a lot of the people who've been in and out of the project, because we've had, you know, the team we have now is not necessarily the whole team that we had at the beginning. Every single person loves Magic. So clearly, you know, any trading card game basically has to give the nod to Magic as the first of its kind, and still one of the best of its kind. You could argue it's still the best. And you know, a lot of us worked on the World of Warcraft TCG that ended up becoming Hearthstone. You know, the mechanics are very similar, but the original trading card game, you got to play any card in your hand face down as a resource. And so we had experience with that game, which sort of led us to one of the more probably internally controversial decisions, which was that's how our resource system ended up. And why flip cards are the way they are, to try to smooth out just the experience of resource, you know, accruance and that kind of stuff. And then I'm totally blanking on the name of the game right now, but I think it was a wrestling themed game that when you took damage, you flipped cards off the top of your deck. And we really loved it. And
I was thinking Dragon Ball.
It's yeah, I mean, there's a lot of games out there, right? And, you know, some things about almost any game are unique to that game, and then a lot of things, like people build off of what's been done before and what works, and you slightly tweak and augment things to sort of fit your game or whatever you're doing. And so those are kind of the big ones, I would say. There's almost nothing that I know of that is similar to Bakugan in the the rolling of toys and picking up tokens kinetically. So clearly that was all space that we had to figure out purely on our own. So I guess that gives a pretty decent idea.
Nice. Were you all like in the developing mechanic process of the rolling and the using of cores? Did you all expect people to end up as good as what we are at hitting specific cores?
No, no, not at all. Actually, I actually have on my desk. I don't know how easy you'll be able to see them, but like we received like prototype, like not painted.
Arabian.
Like this was the one that we used all the time because it would actually open. But we would receive really early prototypes that were hard to close, difficult to make open. We didn't play with any core toys at all before the game came out. We had no idea what that was like. That's like a more behind the scenes thing that I'm not sure I can really talk about. But the end result is we didn't play with core toys at all. We only received prototypes of Ultra toys. That's awesome. And we would play with full teams of Fangzors and stuff like that. So we had it was a constant fear of ours. We're like, we have no idea what this experience is actually going to be like. Are some of these Bakugan going to be way easier to open? Are some of them going to hold on to cores better? We just didn't know. And we had to finish before we could know, because that was just the matter of fact. That was just how the timeline worked out in production. And so there's like a handful of cards and things that I would probably point to as maybe some of our, in terms of card balance, like probably our biggest mistakes that I think sort of are born because of they were born because of our misunderstanding or underestimation of how good people would be at rolling. So like Super Fuel is a good example. Super Fuel is insanely powerful. It basically, in any game you draw it, if you're guaranteed to hit, it shortens it speeds up the game by 2 turns. And we thought that this was a really exciting card because sometimes you miss, right? And you do, right? People miss. And it's a huge cost when you miss with Super Fuel. So there is that tension, but after watching people play, we all went like, like that card's going to be really, really good. and we knew it was going to be good. We just thought there would be more tension and more excitement and more like risk involved than it ended up being. So I'd list that card. And then I think you can see like, what is it? The Aquos Hydrus, right? That is just like pretty severely, like pretty overstated. Again, it was just, I think in addition to underestimating people and how well they could roll, I think we overestimated the cost of having a Helix power, especially on a card that only had 1 Helix, right? Mm-hmm. And so we thought there could be difficulties here. You can play cards where you steal cores and stuff like that. And we thought this card would be good. This would be a very good character, but I think looking at it now, I'd say it's over the line. So that's a couple of quick examples. There are other examples because the reality of doing the work that we do and the timelines that we do it. I'm not the type of person to say that we don't make mistakes, right? And I think that some of our mistakes are, if you kind of trace them back, it might give you some extra context for how we wound up where we wound up. Is we really underestimated people's ability to roll.
Both of those that you just mentioned are in my current deck.
Yeah, well, those cards are really good.
I only play the 1 Helix too, and I hit it every time.
Yeah, well, yep.
And Super Fuel, like if you look for that card anywhere, it's like people are selling that for crazy prices right now.
Yeah, it's like the priciest card, right?
Yeah,
that's why I just go with their 0. I'm like Super Fuel. Yeah, I'll just go with some of your zeros.
I've got my Hex playset.
Yeah, I have one of those too. A Hex playset. Lucky me.
So we got 10 minutes left in this meeting before we can go ahead and start the next one because
sure.
Zoom and stuff. So Kim, is there anything that you wanted to talk about before we?
Oh yeah. So just even seeing like the mechanics, because staying up with like the Fusion Force, how like you obviously got the Baku gear, and obviously in the old school way of playing there was battle gear, And also another mechanic being, because I was a fan like the entire, I watched all the way through the Titanium Surge until it ended. But like the Baku mutants, that's what they were called then, and then obviously seeing Fusion Bakugan now. Did you get like inspiration from those like two mechanics from those like end seasons of like the first era of the game in order to like get the ideas for stuff now?
So the card mechanics, the way that they played, we actually had almost no information. We just were told that these were Bakugan that combined to each other. And so one of our earliest ideas was, well, double-sided character cards, and we sort of went from there. A lot of the stories and look of everything, that we do that in tandem with writers and entertainment. So, but the card mechanics were just all we heard were from Spin Master was we're combining Bakugan, and that's what we ran with. So
It's amazing how little you guys have to work off of, and you just make it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. I have trouble with the actual Bakugan names still because we don't get the final names for a long time. So, Pegatrix, easy to remember, right? But for me, because it was called Pegasus the whole time. But there are some that are not as easy as that. They're like, people ask me like, well, what about this one? And I'm like, Galator? Like, what are we talking about? Like, oh, Salamander. Yeah, the Salamander for sure. And then I'll remember. But so we get more sometimes and less sometimes. It really depends on timelines and where the show's at and all that kind of stuff. It really varies from set to set.
Yeah. All right. So picking up where we left off, I had a quick question regarding the fusion cards specifically, and like, I don't know how much information you were given regarding the fusion Bakugan. Like you said, you were just told they're Bakugan that fuse. So like, when we went to the Invitational, the second one, they had a whole wall just full of the cards. And, we were looking at those, and it's like, oh, snap, there's, like, cards that are two factions.
Yeah.
So what was the fuse? Did you guys know about the fusions at the time that you put out the double faction cards, or is that just kind of a cool thing that you guys decided to cook up?
My memory's going to maybe fail me a little bit here, so maybe somebody at Spin Master is going to be mad. But, there is a lot of collaboration that happens. And when I say, they told us it's going to be two Bakugan that come together, right? It's not as simple as that. There is like a variety of ideas, a variety of concepts moving around. And I think for set 1.1, right? So we call them 1.1. So the second release of Resurgence. We initially pitched that as introducing dual faction cards because we really liked the idea of dual faction cards given how the color system worked in Bakugan. We thought it was very meaningfully different than a variety of other games in a way that felt very cool. And people just like dual faction stuff, right? Us included. We're like TCG nerds just like anybody else, So we wanted to start making dual faction cards. And they really liked it, but they were like, let's wait until year 2. And I think that sort of put a stake in the ground for Fusion. And I think it felt like a good pair to the year of introducing these, 5 different color pairs. Not that the Fusion necessarily followed the same story and same pairs as the cards, but and there was some confusion internally, actually. It's like, what's a fusion card? What's a fusion character? It's like, well, no, these are dual faction cards, right? And people, on the project who weren't necessarily as versed in trading card games were like, well, what's the difference, And it's like, well, they're a little different. And so we just wanted to lead year 2 with dual faction cards because we thought it was just going to look awesome and be really fun for people. And even though fusion characters got pushed back after the fact, after we made that decision, we were like, yeah, we'll just keep it. It's separate. It's separate in a way that, you don't need dual faction. You don't need fusion characters to play dual faction cards. It works just fine. So that's sort of why we led with the intention originally was to do that at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I could see that. But also I like I like the route that you all took, because it kind of, for me, it kind of lets you stick your toe in the water of like everything starting to mix.
Yeah. It gives you the ideas. And then another funny thing about year 2, the way things ended up panning out was, excuse me. So our original idea for Fusion Force was, well, we have all these fusion guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a hook for the set in and of itself. We're going to have all these cards that reference fusion Bakugan and guys who have fused, and how many fusion guys you have on your team. And we had that for a long time. And then based on releases and stuff, it turned out that, well, these character cards won't actually come out in original planning before COVID. They won't come out until a few months after the TCG set drops. And we're like, oh no, we don't have a new mechanic for the card set anymore, because we can't reasonably put fusion referencing cards into the boosters before you have fusion characters. It's nonsense, right? It would feel bad to get these cards that you can't even use yet. And so we scrambled. We were like, what are we gonna do? Like, we don't have fusion characters. We were building this whole set around these fusion characters. And so in one meeting, we came up with like, well, what do we have that's new? Like, well, we have Baku gear. Like, that's still cool and new. And, well, we could do fusion Baku gear. Like, okay, all right, that's good. Fusion Baku gear, that's good. And then I think, I don't remember who had the idea, but it was like, well, what if like fusion Baku gear, some of them broke the rule and you could attach a second one? And we ran with it. We played a bunch. We were like, this is great. This is cool. This totally works. And then we added these actions that reference how many gear you have in play, because, well, now you could go higher than 3, right? And so that was kind of like a sort of, I'm happy with the way it turned out in the end, but it was not planned that way until we had to scramble to figure it out. So that's a good example of like, things can get kind of crazy when you're like trying to make a card game that pairs with toys.
Because you not only have, to keep up with the show and everything that's going on with the show, but you have to make sure that your cards are coming out in line with the toys that are coming out, and the toys are coming out faster than the card sets are coming out. Like,
yep. It's a huge undertaking too, especially with Evos, and something we opted into year 1 was like every toy gets an Evo, and it didn't even turn out to be that way because of some things that maybe I don't even really have knowledge of, but like that was the idea. And so year 2 we're like, are we going to keep doing this? And it was like, no, we can't do this. There are too many, and we can't keep like change. Like, it's so hard to keep up with the changes and shifts. It was like such a year 1 that was easily the biggest burden that would oftentimes derail us completely from what we were trying to accomplish in a number of ways. It's like, okay, we like this constant like iteration, and not to complain, like the toy line is amazing and they do their thing, right? Like, I'm not trying to stop them from doing their thing, because the toys are the show. Like, that's the star of the show for sure. And so I would never, I'm not criticizing that aspect. I'm just saying, like, it was a learning process for sure that we had to figure out along the way. And so it might be sad to hear me say something like not every toy gets an Evo anymore, but honestly, I think like the game as a whole will end up being better as the years go on, because we're making this adjustment.
I agree, because if like at one point, I want to say it was like Resurgence, where we got like a bunch of Evos.
It was Age of Aurelus for sure.
Yeah, especially Age of Aurelus.
Over half the set was Evos.
Yeah,
it was like, it felt like
it was wild.
It felt like the set was like so clogged with Evos, and a lot of them just almost felt kind of like filler, because like they weren't like as competitively viable. So it was like, I don't know.
I agree. I agree. Unfortunately, I mean, time constraints and adjusting is just. I think that an Evo in and of itself sort of stands as a viable thing if your toy is the one you want to play with for whatever reason. A lot of times it can be easy in the most invested community to view it as like, if I have all of the toys, what's the best team? And if you really take a step back and think about it, that's not the average person's experience. with something like this, right? Like
Yeah.
they like the look of a toy, or like they like the theme or something, or they just so happen to buy that starter pack or whatever, and like giving them an Evo, even if it's not maybe the best in the best 10% of power levels, right? Because unless we make everything the same exact power level, you know, something's going to be in the top 10%, some things are going to be in the top 20%. That's just the nature of there being power levels. You know, even if your Evo for your favorite toy or the only team you have, you know, it's valid, right? In that sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say, Kimbo?
Yeah, okay, I guess it's like a two-part thing. So the first part would be like, I really dig how things have even gone with the Evos, well, like the fusion, because they're kind of like Evos themselves. So you spend a certain amount of energy, you flip the card over, and then you get your bonus right there. And plus, it makes it where like you don't have to include like a bunch of Evo cards, saying like, you know, a card set. So you got the
gives
Evo
you that power
right
up story. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes so much space for like so many other cards, and I think that's really, really cool. And another part to add to it is the artwork for the fusions on the back, how they're like big time full art status. Are you guys like contemplating having it where like some elites in the future are like that, where they're like full art like that, because they look really awesome, and I know I'd get a bunch of vegetables.
X character card.
They do look good.
I think there's all kinds of cool. Actually, this is not so much my department. This is like cosmetic, kind of. You know, I help review ideas and talk about stuff like this, but Spin Master has done a great job, I think, in just the look of the cards and the types of card frames. And this was totally. I can't remember exactly who it was. I want to say maybe like. Mikey Lee over at Spin Master really kind of spearheads a lot of this. He definitely does. I don't know if this specific execution was him, but he's awesome. He does great work, and he's like super dedicated to making really cool stuff. So I think you'll continue to see really, really cool looking things that, you know, promo cards and various series that we were trying to unveil this year. Still hoping, you know, trying to figure it all out. So hopefully you get to see a lot of cool stuff soon.
Some of
that COVID putting a damper in everything.
Right.
It was honestly, it was such a heartbreak.
I know.
I mean, for the obvious reasons, right? Like it goes without saying that there are worse things than Bakugan, you know, being derailed with this thing.
I don't know about that.
But you know, like that said, you know, it's like it was so disappointing for us because we had put so much of our hearts into the local store program, and we still are. So I know maybe a lot of people in the community are wondering like what's going on, and we don't know exactly what's going on because we don't have control over a lot of this stuff or any of this stuff really. But you know, it's still a passion of ours. We still believe that if we can really roll out something in hobby stores, give local stores and local communities some product and game modes and ways to sort of bring people together, that this thing can really, you know, just because COVID took the wind out of our sails right when we were hitting our peak doesn't mean that like we can't figure it out down the line. So, but yeah, it's super sad to watch it kind of just disappear. Things getting canceled and
Oh yeah, big time heartbreaker. I guess. Okay, I got like literally one more question, then I'll shut my face.
You're
I know
good.
you might not be able to like.
That's what we're here for, Kim.
But I know it might be something you can't fully answer, such. But has there ever been an idea of like, oh, maybe let's just like mass put out something like on, say, a site like say Amazon. You know, like say you put out like a certain wave of TCG and like get it on Amazon or such, so people can get it there. Like, has that ever been like a thing?
There are definitely a lot of people trying to figure out any possible solutions that might exist. As far as like selling things and this type of stuff, really, you've gone beyond my scope. So I can't really speak to any of that stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to speculate or say something that is not really in my sort of purview at all. Right?
Yeah. Got you. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Man, I know I had something else, but it just like left.
I have something if you want to think on it for a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, and I talked about this last episode. We had a episode a couple weeks ago where we had a guy named Luke. He's one of Michael's friends. He's become one of my friends. He was also one of Kim's friends.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays just about every TCG, right? And so we were talking about longevity of the game and like how Magic, it's been going 20 plus years. With the old Bakugan, that game went as long as the show did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you there was no show to back it, so I mean, I don't think the Spin Master wouldn't have released like new toys if there wasn't a show to go with it back then.
Yep.
But I think with Bakugan now still ramping up, the player base is still growing. If the show were to end, would the TCG still go, or try and make it work to go, or? Because that was one of my biggest concerns.
So the plan and the belief from the get-go of the Bakugan Pro game was that instead of making a game that rode the coattails of a TV show, right? And you could there are other examples of games that have lasted and done well without, started with TV show and then continued on for forever, right? Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and those still have show contents, and those are awesome games in their own rights for various reasons. But the from the get-go, our team's belief, and Spin Master also believed in the same thing, was that this could be something that lasts for, instead of just 3, 4, 5 years, longer than that. Now, can I necessarily say that that's guaranteed? Of course not. I don't know how long the show is necessarily slated for, what the toy line looks like. I can tell you, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. I sometimes say things I'm not supposed to, but I like you guys and I don't think it's that big of a deal. But we have talked about ways to continue the game on indefinitely, right? Even considering all sorts of potential hurdles. So, and I'm not really, I don't want to go into what those hurdles might be, that you could probably imagine a lot of them. But we have talked about it and we love this game a lot. And so all I can say is, I guess that I hear you. And the intention is that, yes, this game lasts as long as people want to play it.
That's awesome, because like, I'm not even just saying this, like, this is literally my favorite TCG that I've ever played, and I've played quite a few TCGs as well. I've played Magic, I've played Yu-Gi-Oh, I've played Kaijudo, I've played I've played
You
Yu-Gi-Oh
name
for
it.
a long time.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I mean, I love everybody I've met who loves Bakugan, who's in the community. I see that there's this special aspect to it, and I don't even think we really understood how cool it was to have this unified moment, this kinetic aspect, this exciting moment every single turn. Like we suspected it. It was why we made a TCG that had shared turns, right? That's a kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
And instead of taking turns rolling, that's, we really wanted that moment. But like it exceeded what we could ever have really expected watching people play. And so even though I don't think it's like the most popular game yet, I think that there's something about it that that gives an experience and an excitement that other TCGs just really can't replicate. Like it's impossible to replicate, because you can't have a moment like when you're watching, and maybe people will think that I'm like being ridiculous right now, but like when you're watching the NBA or the NFL and you see this thing, you see a person literally do something, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, he did that. I can't believe that he rolled like between these two things and like found the one like magic shield core that he had to do, and he bulldozed his opponent out. Like there are things about this game that no other TCG can provide. Like literally no other TCG can provide. And I think that's special. So
I agree.
No, I completely agree.
And something else that I don't know, maybe it's just my personality type. And I talked about this. I don't know if it was in the last episode or if it was the one that we attempted to record and just butchered. But I talked a lot about
the butchered one.
Was it? I talked a lot about like I'm a very like tactile person. I like having things to hold. That's why I'm very pro video brawling versus like Tabletop Simulator or Untap or anything like that. Like I like having the pieces in my hands. I like doing that. That's why I play TCGs instead of video games. It's my thing. But having like, for me, Darkus Nihilus, like he's the head of my rapid fire deck. Having this like aspect of my deck, I know this is gonna sound totally crazy, but it helps me kind of identify my place like in the game. So I feel more connected in the game by having something tactile to hold on to, that if I feel like taking it with me somewhere to fiddle with, awesome, because I struggle with ADHD. So having something to kind of like, just mess around with and stuff, it really helps me kind of stay focused too. So I don't know. But yeah, I just really, that's one of my favorite things about this game is the fact that it's got that tactile portion of it where you have to, it's, dexterity. You have to know what you're doing, there's a skill to rolling, and it's very important. It's a very important aspect to the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate, to one of my good friends and guys who I worked on Redikai amongst other games with, is a pretty well-known Magic player, Hearthstone streamer now, Brian Kibler, who is famous for his insanely fast ability to shuffle cards in his hands.
Yeah.
Right? And it's actually something to behold in reality. But it's the reason I bring it up is like, he would have cards with him, I have cards at my desk, and when I'm on calls, I'm shuffling cards, and I think that, there's something about the, fidgetiness of our personalities and the way our brains kind of like to exist that is true about that. And I think Bakugan does a great job in kind of like in a new way with the toys and rolling them up and rolling them. That is fun. I agree. I totally agree.
Definitely. It's like, I don't know. And part of like also like having this, this little monster, it's like, it's physically there. It's like you took all the cool aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they were like, oh, you play this card and here's this big monster. You took that and you made it real. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I can't claim any credit for that. I mean, that's
I know.
I'm
just saying, like,
yeah, I just want credit where it's due. Like they do an amazing job, and yeah, not everything's perfectly smooth. Not everything goes exactly how we maybe would in hindsight do everything, but like the reality is that what they do is very difficult to do it at the level that they do it. And I'm always impressed when they show us new stuff. I'm always impressed. You guys are going to be blown away by year 3 stuff, because the toy design and some of the new mechanics I can't speak to right now are awesome. They're so awesome. They're so cool.
I'm so hyped.
And maybe to hype you even further, I haven't seen physical prototypes yet, but the sketch prototypes and the concept for year 4, you heard me right, year 4 toys are really cool too, that I don't even know how they're going to do it.
Wow.
They have an idea that's so cool, and it's like breaks my brain with how to design around it. It's going to be so cool.
They're Spin Master. They can
do it all.
Come up with something.
They're coming up with so many cool things for the next several years, and we're working on it. So
I'm excited.
That's
really good to hear.
So happy right now.
just before I got on this call with you guys, I was working on some design work for one of the expansions in year 3. So card design is chugging along. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew you guys and Spin Master are always 4 or 5 steps ahead of us.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's really nice.
We have to be.
Definitely did doubt it.
Yeah,
we have to be. It takes a long time to get all this stuff done.
Real quick, I don't think you'll know have the answer to this, but COVID aside, if everything clears up and an invitational happens, is year 3 stuff the stuff that we're going to get to see at the invitational?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Oh.
But I'll be there, and I like to break the rules a little bit and share mechanics and show stuff off, but not right now. Not right now.
Too soon.
Well,
Too soon.
maybe right now. I think I can give a little sneak peek. Nothing crazy.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. Maybe it's going to be disappointing when it comes out of my mouth, but year 3, we will be having dual faction cards, but they will be all of the other dual factions. So that's the first time you're hearing it from here. Official.
Oh my god!
Right.
And with those dual factions, will come all new tag words for how they play together, just like the year 2 dual factions. So.
Wow. Okay. So like, oh man, like
Yeah, so like Darkest Chaos has its own mechanic. Pyrus Aquas has its own mechanic, etc.
This is gonna be amazing.
I'm
so excited.
I melted in my couch.
I really, really appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is. Whew. You heard it here first.
That's just aside. That's just aside from the new, like the actual, because we really base our designs around the new toy, the new like what's the toy hook, and I'm not going to spoil what the toy hook is yet. That would make people mad probably.
I'm just glad we got what we got because I wasn't expecting any spoilers.
Yeah,
or anything like that.
More than enough.
I mean, I think it's probably something that people could have maybe taken a guess at, right? It's not the craziest thing, but I can confirm it, and it's sweet.
That's awesome.
Well, awesome.
That makes me excited.
Yeah, so keep on doing what you guys are doing, and all you like fans of the game out there, people part of the community, like we're figuring it out. We're gonna figure out how to right the ship and get things ramped back up again, and we've done a lot of work that will hopefully be enjoyed by y'all for a while.
I'm so excited right now. But yeah, just putting the pieces together, it was like, are we going to see these certain factions, get dual typing cards? I got like one last little question, and it's just a simple one. I know you might not be able to answer it, but are we possibly getting more mono Auralist cards in the game?
Yes, there will be some.
Yes.
Not to the extent of Age of Auralus, right? And there weren't even a ton of those, right? And so we're not doing more Battle Mastery as of right now. And Battle Mastery is just kind of a fancy word for modal, right? So but there will be some more. Almost any set, I feel like there's at least a couple of cards. And there's one in particular that I can think of that I think is the next set that has an action card that's Auralus that's really cool.
Nice.
I don't know if it's like tier 1 spike constructed, but if you build around it, it's really cool. It can have its moments. So maybe you'll remember what I'm saying, and when we spoil it, you can identify what card I'm talking about.
Because I know there's so many people that are wanting to they like to build mono decks for fun. Like recently with the Video Brawl League, we actually held a mono deck tournament where you could only play a single faction. So that was a fun little twist. Aquos ended up winning, surprise, surprise. But a lot of people really want to be able to build like an actual legitimate mono Auralus deck without having to throw in some fillers.
So we actually, when we did Age of Auralus, I was the lead designer for Age of Auralus. I was like, let's make Auralus cards and let's find something fun to do there. We talked about in some length about like, well, should there be enough cards in Age of Auralus to make a mono Auralus deck? And our thinking was not initially, because that could be something cool that we could build up towards as time goes on. So we'll continue to make Auralus cards. And, I wish I could seem really smart right now and tell you that I know when you'll be able to make a mono Auralus deck, but I don't actually know that. So, eventually there'll be enough Auralus cards for sure.
Yeah. I did make a Auralus with some proxies, and it was a little different. It's hard. Like, it's really hard. Like, you try to attempt mono Auralus, it is tough. Like, just...
Yeah. We're really close. The big kicker is, like, not knowing if the effect version of Silent Spears exists.
Yeah, because in my deck that I made, I honestly have the 2 different versions with it. And with my deck that I did make, I used Fangzor, I used Goreen, and I used Trino.
Nice.
Yeah, you gotta find Bakugan with Evos, right? And then you gotta use all the gear that you can use, and then all the Age of Auralus cards. You'll get more though. You'll get more.
Nice.
Actually, the next set has a couple of pretty spicy Arliss gear cards. I can't say too much about them though.
Ooh.
But there are a couple.
It's
Yeah.
exciting stuff.
Gosh.
Well, even just hearing that, I'm like,
All right. Well, I think that wraps everything about up. Like,
Yeah.
I think that was pretty solid.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary, for coming on and
Yeah.
talking to us.
Yeah, this is
Thank
great.
you.
I really enjoyed it. You guys are awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, hopefully
You're awesome.
hopefully we can get some. Yeah. Hopefully we can get some other guys on soon, and this could be a regular thing.
Yeah. I'll talk to
just
Justin.
Justin's brain. Yeah.
Justin's a busy man.
That's been the hardest part, is working around everybody's schedules.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be
'cause,
happy
like-
to jump back on with you guys. Maybe around like the next sort of release or something. I can bring some spoilers.
Hey, that would be sick.
that would be great.
oh,
Yeah.
That'd be great.
great.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
guys.
All right. All right, guys. So that does it for this episode of the BrawlCast. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. If you guys are listening on Spotify, go ahead, like our podcast. And, we're super happy with all the amazing feedback we've been getting. So thank you guys very much for checking us out. Until next time, we'll see you guys next time.